You're listening to The Bird Bath, presented by The Fountain Report. I'm your host, Ryan Leach. Welcome back to The Bird Bath. Each week, we scrape the surface of the news you need to know, so let's get into it. This week, we're going deep into some big deals that are happening in corporate medicine across the veterinary industry. So I've got stories across the board here, and if you don't care about consolidators, well, this one could be a tough one for you here. But let's start off with a company that I know a bit about, and I'm familiar with the partners here and find them to be a really great team. Peloton Capital Management has made an investment in Lakefield Veterinary Group. Now, Lakefield Veterinary Group is probably one that some of you might know about, but you probably couldn't point to their practices on a map. They're a little bit more obfuscated when you go and look into where their practices are and what their overall footprint is. But through the press release here, we're able to see they've got over 70 locations across North America. They're actually a family-owned business, but a pretty large family. The Desmarais family out of Canada, who you might be familiar with, is the parent company or the holding company of Lakefield, but they've brought on Peloton Capital Management as a partner to fund additional expansion. Now, the team at Peloton has a unique investment thesis. Traditionally, private equity groups are more of a 3 to 5 year reinvestment or recapitalization cycle, while Peloton has a little bit more of a longer tail investment that they like to do for some of their funds. I've had the opportunity to meet with some of the folks at Peloton before and find that the way that they look at this is definitely more of a investment in an industry. So if you look back at their previous investments and a current investment that they have out of Canada, is P3, which is a group out of Canada that Peloton has had and held for quite a while now and continues to grow them. But this will be their first foray into the US market. Excited to see where this goes. I know both of the groups here are well established and very considerate ownership groups as well as investment groups. So I think this is going to be a really neat partnership to see continue to grow over the next several years. The next group that was able to bring in some additional financing was CareVet. CareVet, which is a network of 200 veterinary hospitals across more than 35 states, announced it closed a new credit facility with funds managed by BDT and MSD Partners. BDT and MSD Partners is a merchant bank. They work to do strategic and long-term investments. The overall goal of this capital or this credit is for CareVet to have the ability to do additional acquisitions in the space. CareVet does already have a private equity group that has an ownership stake in the company, which is Compass Group Equity Partners. They made their investment in 2018 and have stayed on board here at helping CareVet grow over the past 6 years. But that is the only investment that Compass Group has in the veterinary space. The majority of their other investments are in large equipment and pumps and motors and cranes and things of that nature, although they do seem to have expanded into some human healthcare. But neat to see that CareVet is going to be growing even more and more. So we're starting to see this. Things are ramping up again on the M&A side across our industry. Previously, we talked about the deal that involved MedVet and the recapitalization of their business and a story from PE Hub talking about the potential limitations of consolidators consolidating each other or private equity groups acquiring multiple consolidators. But we have now seen our first of what I'm expecting to be many more this year and next year of groups buying groups. So Veterinary Innovative Partners and Valley Veterinary Care have joined forces. So Veterinary Innovative Partners, which goes by VIP, owns practices across 9 states, and they have announced an acquisition of Valley Veterinary Care, which owns 24 clinics in Texas, California, and Colorado. It's a pretty significant expansion for VIP's networks, and now they've got about 70 practices owned nationwide. One thing that I thought was specifically interesting about this was that they did highlight in the press release that all Valley Veterinary Care general and emergency practices will continue to operate under their legacy names. This is kind of important because I know someone that sold their practice to Valley Veterinary Care. And one thing about that was trying to understand what it meant today and what it's going to mean for the practice in the future. So when they sold initially to Valley Veterinary Care, now they have a new parent company through VIP, and understanding what that means for you as you're navigating it is a big part of selling your practice. So neat to see that they're keeping that legacy name intact. I know VIP just went through a rebrand at the beginning of this year. So we're starting to see, again, this growth, and groups are buying groups and groups are investing in groups. So I think we'll continue to see that. I know there's conversations around mergers and there's conversations around acquisitions of one group and the next. So could be interesting to see what else comes out of this over the next few months. Now, one final veterinary consolidator group story here comes from Inspire Veterinary Partners. Inspire had a busy past couple weeks. They announced last Monday that they were doing a $6 million public offering, a second tranche of shares that they were going to be putting into the marketplace at a $6 million valuation for those shares. And the interesting thing was that this announcement, it was preceded by, traditionally as required with the SEC, an S-1 filing that was filed with the SEC late June. Then the days leading up to, and actually just a couple days before this full announcement of the $6 million public offering came out on Friday, the Friday preceding, the share price saw a massive amount of increased trading. So for what was traditionally a rather sleepy stock on the market, it saw huge trading volumes in Friday as well as pre-market Monday hours, leading up to the point where then they announced this $6 million public offering, which they then closed on the 10th, which was last Wednesday. So a lot of activity, some interesting news here, and we've covered IVP before. The big story that we covered previously was the reverse stock split. So they took every 100 shares and turned them into one. So the stock opened at an IPO almost a year ago, at what would adjusted be $400 a share. It was $4 a share when they first brought it to market, but with the reverse stock split, you're looking at $400 a share. They came all the way down to about $3 a share, or at the time was 35 cents a share, which did the reverse stock split, bringing it up above the NASDAQ's minimum threshold for trading. And now we're seeing the stock since Monday continuing to trend upward. It's in around the $11. It peaked on Monday at over $14.73. So pretty significant growth here. Obviously, it is still down from 400 to 11 or 14, but we're hoping to see that this continued activity in the industry is leading towards some growth. I'd love to see Inspire turn this story around and be a successful business and successfully grow and show a path for a publicly traded company to be successful consolidating veterinary practices. So big news there, lots of interesting things. If you don't want to hear about corporate groups growing and getting money and investing in things like that, well, maybe you want to hear about real estate. So a big story and a really interesting story out of the real estate investment world. So US Veterinary REIT has announced that they're joining forces with CareVet's investment group. US Veterinary REIT, which is part of Thurston Group and AMO Partners, is a really incredible company. It's a group that I have had the chance to spend some time with before. And I actually, to get ready for this story, hopped on the phone with co-founder Michael Crandall of US Veterinary REIT to just ask him, break this down for me, get out of the real estate words and make this something that I can bring to the masses. So when Michael and I talked, he really opened up the door and let me sort of understand a little bit more about the strategy behind this and why US Vet REIT as well as CareVet's partnered together to try and bring some changes to the real estate industry within the vet space. So what Michael broke down was historically a REIT, and especially US Veterinary REIT, when they look to acquire a business and they look to acquire the real estate, they do that in a rollover component. So the idea of a REIT is in many ways diversifying what your holdings are. So a lot of practice owners sell their practices to the groups that we've talked to before. They get this additional capital, they're acquiring the practices, and then they still own that real estate in a lot of situations. And these practice owners many times are either desiring to hold on to it, they want to sell it, or they want to find a new company to be the landlord. And that's not always in the playbook of the veterinary consolidation group. So US Veterinary REIT comes in and allows these practice owners to be able to sell their business into the REIT and have a continued ownership and rollover equity in not just their own facility, but in the entirety of the real estate investment trust. Now, what does come in to be a hurdle here, and the reason why Covitz has entered into this, is now with Covitz's capital, they are able to create an opportunity for someone to sell the real estate of their business, participate in the REIT, as well as finding liquidity. So putting all this together, and let me tie a bow around this, for anyone that's either looking to sell their practice, looking to start a group, looking to put together interesting deals to acquire practices, what you should be looking at here is the new capital that just flooded into the market from these investments. So we're seeing that deals that maybe you looked at, or if you're selling your practice that maybe disappeared in late 2022, maybe those are something you pick up the phone or you send a follow-up email and say, hey, are you back in the market? Because we're looking to sell the practice still. If the numbers aren't making sense there's always the opportunity to look at what a REIT can provide. And US Veterinary REIT does a spectacular job of this. And so looking at that as a way to diversify your investments, as well as now with Covitz being able to find some of the liquidity there. So if you're looking to sell your practice, there's the parent company who's entering the market, who has the capital to be able to pay you what you want for your business. There's the question of what kind of contracts are going to be in place. Are you going to be signing a non-compete? We hit on that. Is your team going to be needing to sign a non-compete? What's going to happen to the legacy? What's going to happen to the name of the practice? What's the capital looking like? Where's the money coming from? Who's going to be keeping it? And then what's the future state of the business? Where's the trends and where are things going? So lots of really interesting things to be thinking about for people that are getting back into the M&A portion of the veterinary industry. And thank you again to Michael Crandall for taking the time to demystify this press release for me. I think overall it's going to be something really great to see for our industry, and always happy to see more people finding the bullish nature that I always feel about what the veterinary industry can bring for the economy. Finally, I want to make sure that you all are knowing about the top events and the top places that you need to be. So a number one event that I always throw out there and really recommend for people to participate in is VetForum USA. So VetForum USA is an event put on by Open Room. They host these VetForum events across the globe, and the USA one is set to come back to Texas in September. It's a 2-day event, September 23rd and 24th. And what VetForum does, which is a little different than a lot of other events, is it is all about the opportunity to network and learn from people at the top levels of each one of these groups. So it brings together C-suite and decision makers from all of the veterinary groups, along with the term vendors, but the providers of technology, services, accounting, everything under the sun that goes into running a practice. And it brings these folks all into the same room and allows them to really spend 2 days talking transparently about what they want to see for each other's businesses. It's something that I think that whether you're a vendor and you're looking to sell to large groups, or you're a large group looking to understand what the landscape looks like of services, you would be remiss to not spend 2 days getting in what could probably take you 12 to 18 months worth of research and calls and Zoom meetings and things like that. So it's an incredible event. I also have the distinct opportunity to be able to speak at the event. So I'm going to be leading a vendors only session. And the vendors only session is going to be a pretty fun one. So what the goal is, I want to maybe not throw water on it, but maybe have you understand, if you're looking to sell to large groups, to understand what is involved in actually winning one of these large deals. So I think of us like the dog that maybe caught the car and doesn't know what to do when one of these really large groups says, yeah, we'd love your services, but what scale needs to be there? What's the backbone? What's your business need to have in place to be able to service a deal of these sizes and really make it so that it's something that can be incredible? There's going to be over 40 veterinary groups, 45 vendors, over 150 decision makers in attendance. And on top of that, it's at a gorgeous facility in Austin at the Lost Pines Resort. So if you want to learn more, send an email to Christopher@openroomevents.com, or you can always send me a message, whether it's on LinkedIn or comment on the post or anything like that. I can assure you it's going to be something really fun and an event that I always find a lot of value in. For more on these and other stories, join us by subscribing to the Fountain Report. There's a link in the bio, and don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing and rating the show. For the Bird Bath, I'm Ryan Leach. See you next week.